The following is a presentation of TFNN.
Good afternoon, folks. This is Steve Rhodes. I hope that you all are doing well, and I know there's a number of folks that are going to be catching this on the archive. So, as always, if you have any questions, easy to get to me, Steve at TFNN.com. That would be great. And so let's go ahead and let's begin. Now, we've got a number of different aspects that we have to pay attention to that are coming up here in the next several days. First, though, what I want to do is just make sure everybody knows when the next lunar trading, the celestial charting webcast is, which is going to be 2 weeks from today. So we're at August 24th, so it's going to be September 7th, and we'll take a look at the aspects. We'll have a full moon that will be coming due on the following Monday on September the 12th. So that's when our next webcast is. Now, I've shown this slide before, and I'm going to go over it. I finally have one that's a little bit more clear, a little bit more legible for you folks to take a look at. And this is this is a page from the New American Ephemeris, 2007 to 2020. This is really what I use, and it's something that you should use as well. This is StarCraft Publishing. Here's the phone number where you can call and get a copy of this. I believe it's $19.95, so it's a good $20 investment. And what you're dealing with, this top section here, is dealing mostly with what we primarily are using is we're using the information really down in here. You've got the moon phenomena that's listed down here, if you will. So it shows you when you're at maximum or zero declination, which we're going to talk about today, when the moon is closest and furthest from us, perigee and apogee. You can take a look at the void, of course. We're not going to really discuss that much today, but it is a period of time that shows you when prices can be very unstable. For example, today, this is actually the August page from the New American Ephemeris. So today being August 24th at 9:34. Now, this is ephemeris time, so if you back this off to Eastern Standard Time, you'd be dealing with 4:34 in the morning. And so it shows when you begin going void, of course, when you come back in right here, which shows 10:30. Sorry about this portion here. It's just the way that we are able to scan the page. And what you really are using the ephemeris for is really the bottom part, which is this daily aspectarian piece. And here is where you're being able to identify the different planetary aspects that are taking place. So today is the 24th, and this shows the number of aspects that are going, that we're dealing with today. What you want to do is you want to really be taking a look at those items that are major aspects. And major aspects, folks, are these here. Major aspects are the ones where you're dealing with either square, opposition, trine, sextile, or conjunction. And we're basically, it's another way of saying that in square that it's 90 degrees is the angle, or 180 degrees when you're opposite, you're on the other side. And these are the 5 primary major aspects that we would be taking a look at. And so those are shown here. Now, in the front of the ephemeris, you would have a guide, a key, if you will. And so, this circle right here on the 24th, this is representing the sun. Obviously, this is right above that is or 2 pieces above that, or right here at the very top one, that's representing the moon. Underneath that, what we have right here is, let me see, that is going to be Uranus. And no, I apologize. Yeah, that's Uranus, and so this in essence here, this is telling you that Uranus is contra-parallel to. Let's see here. What's this next sign? Give me a second here. That is Jupiter. So, in any event, this is how the ephemeris is used. Now, many times you've heard me talk about p-index dates, and in p-index dates you would be counting how many different aspects that you have occurring, and if you have less than 3 or more than 14. And actually, I'm going to show you at the end of the today's presentation, I'm going to show you maybe some new numbers for us to take a look at if you're using the 2007 to 2020 edition. Now, so again, I suggest you getting a copy of the of this ephemeris, New American Ephemeris, 2007-2020 from Starcraft Publishing. When we take a look at what's really going on around us today, celestial-wise and lunar-wise, it's really what it is that we have coming up on Tuesday, where we have everything that is kind of meeting each other. Now, tomorrow, Thursday, we do have a Venus trine Pluto, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So tomorrow is going to be an interesting day, and you'll see why in a moment. But when we take a look at what's going on with regard to August 30th, when we take a look at the daily aspectarian, here we've got Venus in trine again. Trine, folks, if you go back to your key, trine is at 120 degrees, and it's a major aspect. So any one of these five are major aspects. And so we have really two things taking place next Tuesday. This one begins early in the morning, so this is going to be at 1:47 in the morning. And we have also Jupiter going retrograde. We're going to take a look at that specific aspect and the type of impact that it's had on the markets going back to 1929. And the reason why I'm focused on August 30th is because we have these aspects and we have also these lunar aspects. And you can see I have them labeled 1, 3, 4, and 5 because you'll see as we come back to it, 1 represents what typically has a larger degree of impact versus 5, a smaller degree of impact. But what you can see here on the 29th and 30th, we have lunar aspects tying into some other planetary aspects that are out there. And the ones in red are really what it is that we're going to be focusing on in today's presentation. And if we take a look at lunar phases, so if I'm going back here, and you can see I have this labeled 1, 3, 4, 5. If you were to take a look at lunar phases and maybe put them in order of importance, what you would be doing is typically the ones that have the most impact from a short-term standpoint you would put them in this order here, where you're at maximum or zero declination, where the true node of the moon, where you have a full moon, new moon, which we've been primarily focused on. When you've got the moon, where it's either the furthest from us or the closest to us. And again, as I mentioned in the early part of the presentation, when the moon is void of course. So you've got these 5 primary lunar phases that you would take a look at. And you could typically, identify this as being the number 1 most important to have an impact on price, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Now, the true node of the moon, if we go back to the front page here of the ephemeris, that's really what this upper section here is dealing with. And so I'm not going to go into that today, but that's really what the upper portion of the ephemeris is helping you to identify. One of the things that it's helping you to identify. And so, again, if we come back here, you can see on the 29th and the 30th, we have basically 4 of these aspects that are lining up that we need to pay attention to. Now, if we take a look back here, and I just want to quickly touch on Venus at 120 degrees or trine of Pluto. And the reason why I want to mention that is because Venus and Pluto are really what are considered the 0.618 aspects. And so the length of travel between these two planets basically takes 225 days. So if you were to divide 225 by 365, what you'll get is 61.6 or 61.58 something. So, how wild is that you've got 2 planets that in essence are lining up with regard to a Fibonacci sequence. Now, normally I would have paid total focus to this specific aspect and what was going on, but as I was preparing for this over the weekend and in the beginning of the week, and we took a look at the aspects that really were going to be occurring kind of in conjunction with each other, all happening around the 30th, it made more sense to focus on that, and that's why I've chosen to do that for today. But this is an important aspect, to take a look at. It's a much longer term aspect, and I haven't done enough work to be able to tell you whether it really turns on the day or it turns within 4 or 5 days. But I will do some additional work on that, and probably will do some of that work before we get to Friday. So again, going back to here's where our focus is now. We're going to right now switch over to the focus of the lunar piece of this. And so the lunar piece, what I've done is I've gone back. So as you can see here again, coming up on August 29th, we have these aspects, if you will. So what I've done is I've gone back into the charts, going back to 1929. I'm going to flip through each of them. Well, I didn't go through 19. I apologize. I didn't go through 1929 on the multiple lunar aspects, but I went back quite a ways. And so, it's not often that you have 2 or 3 or 4 lunar aspects that either hit on the day or within a day of each other. And so that's really what I went ahead and identified. So you can see we've got these 4 aspects here that are lining up. If we go back and take a look at the previous one, happened to be on August 2nd here. Now, in here, we didn't have a full moon or a new moon. We just simply had these 3 lunar aspects that lined up. If we do come back to the last time that we had a full moon, and it was around June 15th, so many of you were around for that when we went long in that marketplace. So we also had multiple aspects that were going on, and you can see how that actually made a bottom. Now, this is the Dow Industrials that we're taking a look at. And so let's continue on and go back here. And so you can take a look at, whether these things made highs or lows, or you can see that they're within a few days. In this case here, if you go back to April 1st time frame, where you had a new moon, where you were at apogee, you were on the equator, on the northern part of the equator. That's what the O and the N is standing for there. And what I also have circled here, and I featured this in the newsletter that I sent out on Sunday, and we talked about it on the radio show on Monday, is that we also had 5 planetary conjunctions. And again, conjunction, if we go back here, conjunction where we are using one of the 5 major aspects. And conjunctions sometimes have a positive or a negative valency. But in this case here, we had 5 planetary conjunctions. And we had 7. I know it says 8 up here. I just didn't get a chance to correct the slide. But there were 7 planetary conjunctions between February 17th and the 25th, so a 7 to 8 day period of time. Now, the reason why I studied this, and you may recall, is because I went back and took a look at the crash of 87, just simply to understand what else was going around there aspect-wise. So I have those things labeled here, but at the same time that we had that going on, you can also see that we had multiple lunar events that were going on in the same time. So I believe that this area that we're in here, as you take a look at these circles, from this top point here on this blue point and probably right down here to the bottom, that this is going to be a very, very important area for us to watch. If the market moves up through this, if for some reason, whatever that might be, the market ends up moving through this, it would tell us that the strength of the move is very large. What I expect is that the market is going to move up into this, and then it's going to go ahead and give it up, if it gets all the way up there. So this area becomes very, very important for us to watch, and when we take a look at that, I think on this chart here, that also really starts to line up with this series retrograde motion as well. So we're going to pay close attention to that. And again, on this chart here, you can see where I've got multiple lunar events that are all taking place on the same day. If we take a look at March 19th, that was when we had that super full moon, and you can also see that we had 3 other aspects that were lining up all on the same day. So you can see that this was also a very, very powerful set of aspects, which really says, because you've heard us talk about that March 16th date. This is March 19th. Obviously, the low came in 2 days before that. When this area was taken out a couple of weeks ago, that to me signals just how strong the move down actually is, and why we're really taking a look at this compared with a number of other things, why we're really putting on our bear market hat and looking for short opportunities, and so that's what it is that we're preparing for. I want to continue to go back because I want to make sure that I have all of this on here so that you guys can also study this and come back and you can stop these slides and taking a look at it. And you can see sometimes here, it really doesn't have any type of an impact. And so, but you'll see as we come through here, as we come through these slides, there are, and I haven't gone through each of these events here and kept track as I do with some of the other pieces. I just didn't have enough time to do that for us, but you can go through here as well. There was enough information here to let me know that when you have these multiple aspects appearing at one time, that we really have to be aware of it. As shown here in the August 24th time frame. In August 24th, you may recall, not only did we have a number of lunar events that were taking place, but on the 25th and 26th, or 24th and 25th, we also had a high number of planetary aspects. On one day, I believe we had 3. On another day, we had 18, 19, I can't recall the exact number, but it was a large number. So, when you put all that together, that's why those August 24th area is also a very important point for us to remember. If the market breaks through this area, again, it's telling you how strong the move down would be. Just as well as if these areas hold, it's telling us just how strong the support would be. But we know we've broke through that September 16th, that September 19th area. And so, and when you put that in conjunction with all of this activity that's up here, this really may have been our last, this is the May 2nd time frame. This may have been the last time that we see this high for quite some time. Let's continue going back here, and you can see now I've got some of these other aspects that are up here just left over from some of the other slides. In some cases here, what it is that we're taking a look at. And again, I did the work on the Jupiter retrograde. I mentioned to you the Venus-Pluto aspect, but I haven't completed my work on that. We're going to continue going back here to some other charts into the 2008 time frame. You can see again here where we have 4 aspects, lunar aspects lining up. How this is, a high. You can take a look down here, January 18th time frame. And the blue line here, folks, when you're taking a look at any of these slides, in this case here, the red or the blue are really lining up to the exact day that we're looking at. Sometimes you'll see something that says near, and near is indicating that the reason that it's near is because the event actually took place on a weekend versus an actual trading day. These ones that are in yellow here, these are all ones that I manually input. These other ones here are being input by a program that I developed. Let me keep going back further so you can take a look at how the importance of these aspects when they do line up. They seem to line up pretty well. Even in this case here, it's still in the middle of a move, and I'm talking the September 25th time frame, but you can see it's still marked a bottom that came in there. Look at how the September 10th aspect line up, with a move coming down. Here we had a move coming down August 1st, and so again, very important to take a look at June in 2007, March 19th in 2007. You can see how these things have marked highs or lows in the marketplace. Let's go back, take a look at 2006. And in 2006, you can see we had quite a bit of activity going on between December and October with regard to these events lining up with each other. Here, this marked, a pretty decent high, a pretty decent low. This, to a certain extent, really in the middle of a move. So we just need to, you can't tune your watch to this, but we do have to be paying attention to it. There are periods of time like this here. This really doesn't have a whole lot of meaning to me. I mean, it marked a little bit of a low, maybe a little bit of a low here, maybe again a little bit of a low. But obviously the move kept going up. You would think the low would look more like something that we had, back in one of these charts here. But let's keep going on. Let's keep moving on with this. So, feel free to go back and take a look at the archive, take a look at some of these specific days if you want to line them up with anything else. Now it looks like, we're somewhat back on track here, June 4th, where it specifically marked a high. Back here, December of 2005, showed a pretty decent low here. Seemed to hold as support as you come across. If we take a look back here in 2005 as well, you can see how this marked a pretty nice low here. And if you go back through the slides, you'll see some of these are where you'll have all the aspects on one single day. Typically, it's between 2 separate days. You've got 2 aspects, a new moon on the equator the day prior to it. Here in 2004, you can see how it did a good job here of picking out a high. Really didn't do anything for us here in the January 10th time frame. I don't really think it helped us to identify anything in the February 7th time frame. In here, it was off, I would say, by a couple of days. Let's go back a little further. 2002. So you can see there's enough events here that we've identified where you can flip back through it and just, mark down whether it, it seems like it's either on, or it's not for a period of time. And I can flip back to the last couple of events for us to take a look at as well. But it is, you can clearly see from here, it really is important to pay attention to this work. We just have a couple more slides because as far back as I went. So here we got in 2001. You can see how this picked out a pretty nice low. Here it picked out a pretty nice high. Here it seemed to maybe pick out a high. Obviously you did have a move. To me this was more of a continuation. from this high up here all the way down to the low. And we bounced back up, and the market continued to move down. And then we've got our last aspect here. We picked out in 2001 in March, did a good job of picking out a low. In this case here, obviously picked out a low up through here. So you can see that these things typically are, what seems to be sometimes short-term in duration. But what we do have going on right now is we do have, again, coming in on this coming Tuesday, we do have 4 events that are taking place, 4 lunar events that are taking place, along with a couple of other planetary aspects as well. And if we take a look back here, if we take a look at, has this been working in the past? If we just take a look at the last several events, June 15th, it certainly marked a good low. June 6th and June 7th, it marked a very good high. June 1st, selling on the new moon, did a good job of selling on the new moon all the way through the full moon here. So that seemed to work pretty well. This here, obviously, it was midstream, but you can see, it certainly had an impact and continued to drive the market south, if you will. So I think that coming into this Tuesday, just based on the most recent trend, it makes sense for us to pay attention to that, because even if we go back one set further, we can see how we marked a nice high here, how a nice low here. So right now, I'd say that this is working. This is in some sense of a harmony for us, and why we're going to pay so much attention to it. If we then move on, so I'm now ready to move on to the Jupiter going retrograde aspect. Now here, and again, this is the aspect that is going to be taking place. If I pull this back up here, this is going to be taking place on Tuesday, August 30th. The actual time is going to be at about 4:18 in the morning. So, depending on how the market trades, as we get through this 0.618 aspect, assuming the market continues to move higher, our primary question is going to be whether or not we what we do with our positions going into the close on Monday versus waiting till Tuesday. So we'll just simply have to, hopefully what we'll have, not hopefully, but what we're looking for is we're looking for price to line up with time, this being our time indicator, and price being a retracement perhaps back to the 0.618 or 786 area of the move down. Give me a second here to get back here. So when I took a look at this Jupiter going retrograde, this is the summarized information, and I went back to 1929 to study this, and what I had was a total of 75 aspects that have occurred since then. And what you can see is that 79% of the time it marked either a high or a low. Neither means it was just kind of like a midpoint, if you will, but still giving you a 79% chance of picking out a high or a low seems to be something that we really do want to pay attention to. Now, what I also did is I broke it down in between days where we had highs or lows. And with the -3, -2, -1, 0, and so forth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0 means that the high or low was made on that day. Now, there are a couple of times where the aspect came in maybe on a Sunday, and so if that low came in on a Monday or on a Friday, I went ahead and used that as identifying the high or the low. And so again, what I done, because right now what's important for us to understand is, is there any probability edge? Is Jupiter going retrograde? Is it as we're coming into a high or a low? And so I separated it by that. So in our case here, right now, it appears, and right now as we're doing this, we've got the Dow's up 104, the S&P is up 11. And the small caps seem to be leading the charge here. They're up a little bit over 1% right now. So seems like that we're coming into a high, that we're going to be coming into a high. It's either going to be tomorrow because of the 618 planets, or it's going to be hopefully on Monday or Tuesday. Now, with that being said, what this tells us is that 6 out of the, let's see, how many highs do we have here? I don't know if I've got 32 highs. So 6 out of those 32 times it takes place 2 days before, 3 times 1 day before. 16 times, or half of the time, 50% of the time, occurs on the actual day. So it gives you a little bit of a distribution of when to take a look at it, when to expect it. I have further detail here, and hopefully you can see this. This is really my summary work, if you will. I just tried to squeeze it all on one page here, again, going back to October 5th, 1929, all the way to the most recent one, which was July 23rd of 2010. I made some notes off to the side here, and as you take a look at this, so this tells you the exact date of the aspect, the exact ephemeris time of the aspect, and then identified whether it made a high or a low, or what I called an other, and typically that just simply was in the middle of a move. And then I identified, okay, if it did, for how many days, either on, prior, or post, and that's what the 0 or the minus numbers or the positive numbers will show you. I then, in many cases, went ahead and took a look at what was the duration. I haven't had a chance to go back and take a look at the durations of the highs. I will before we get into Tuesday of next week, just to try to understand as we are coming, if the market continues to move up and as we're coming into a high, and if it does identify a high, what has been the average move number of days, the duration of that pattern. But if you just simply take a look at the first one here, going back to 1929 area, it looks like on January 18th of 1933, it made a high. It made the high 3 days later, and the duration was about 32 days. If you take a look at the next one after that, it came in 2 days before the actual date, and again, the low continued to move on, I believe, or there was a low that was made July 27th, and that was going back all the way to. My eyes I think that was starting at February 7th. So February 7th all the way to July 27th. So that was a pretty long period of time. And just to try to give us an average, here's another high, yes, and it came in right on target, and it lasted for 18 days. One after that for 6 days. You've got 10, 2, 9, 12. So it just gives you a little bit of an idea when highs were being made, which is really the column here that you'd want to be paying attention to on the left here. As far as, how long did it last here? Go to July 18th, 1998. Lasted for 32 days, then 37, 14, 93, 65. So we very much could be making a longer-term high pattern based on the past. So you can go back and take a look at this information. Let's flip through some of the charts so that you can see how these things came in. And here what we've got is, our next aspect is coming in on the 30th. Again, this red line here is identifying the actual day that it came in, and you can see in this case here, the low would have been made, 3 or 4 days prior to that candle. As I continue to flip back here, we can see here, you can see how this came in June 15, 2009, and really right to the day, and you can see how long a period that lasted. If we take a look at this aspect here, it was coming into a low right on target, and lasted only a few trading sessions. So, what we're using this for is we're using this for a time identifier for the market to move down. We're looking for price to also come into a retracement area. And then after that occurs, what we're going to have to use is we're going to have to use either other aspects that are going on or other price patterns or other volume patterns with regard to the length of time that we would go ahead and play this going in the opposite direction. Here we can see that it came in at a high, but only lasted for 3 or 4 days. Here we can see in March of 2006 it came in as a low, and you can see how long it lasted for. It looks like it made an ABC pattern on the way up. We go back further into 2004. Here, it missed the low by maybe 3 days. Here, it certainly was a low that day, but this is one of those mid. I'm sure I labeled this as one of the midpoints. Where it didn't release any information to us. Here you can see where we've made a high, here where we've made a low. So you can see this Jupiter going retrograde. It's very important for us to pay attention to this. Look as I continue to slide back through the charts, just how accurate this is. So that's why it was nice to be able to take a look at the ephemeris data, go take a look at where we had lunar aspects that were lining up with Jupiter going retrograde. This case here in 1998 worked out well. 1997, it missed a low, if you want to call this a low, or maybe this was more of a midpoint. I would take a look at this. It's not releasing a ton of information to us on the June 10th, 1997. If we go back and take a look at this, we can see how we came back in 1996 in May, almost, probably 3 sessions away from making the low. Here, it really didn't release any information to us in 1995. I'm going to keep going back. That way you guys can replay these slides and you have access to them. You can see, again, how Jupiter going retrograde. Again, how in this case here, it was in at a low, if you will. Keep going back. This case here, 1991. To me, this is too far off the mark to have given us any information. The low would have come in too early, so it didn't. In this case here, it didn't work. And again, like I showed you, 79% of the time, you can see how this is identifying highs or lows in the marketplace. Again, you can see it here in 1988, whether it worked or not. Let's continue to go back. 1987. This case here, it did mark a low. I would have taken this as identifying a low that only lasted for 5 days because, it was just too far off the mark here. Let's continue to go back. Here we see how it marked a high coming down. Looks like it probably was only a 0.382 retracement and looked like it finished an ABC up. Here it did a good job of picking out a high. Going back to 82. And I'm going to start flipping through these slides here to make things a little bit easier for you. Again, a good job in 81 of picking out a low. This case here, I would say it was 3 days off from having, I guess I can't tell. It looks like I can't tell on this one here for December 25th whether that was really a midpoint. Let's take a look back here. Again, picked out a high. Didn't last, but for 3 trading sessions, picked out a low. Lasted, for looks like maybe about 10 to 15 trading sessions. Here, picked out the high pretty well in 1976. In 1975, sometimes I labeled these things on the bottom when they could have been up here on the top, so it did a good job of picking out a high. Here, picked out a low, only lasted for maybe 10 trading sessions. Here, picked out a high, lasted for probably about 7 or 8 trading sessions. Let's continue going back. 69. I know you guys are probably getting tired of hearing my voice, but I do want to, at least, since I've got all these charts, I do want to go ahead and cycle through them, so that you can see that, the impact of Jupiter going retrograde. And, this is something that you're certainly going to want to write down and make sure it's something that you do pay attention to. Now, you can see there's quite a length of time that typically occurs in this process. And back in 62, you can see how it did a good job here of picking out a low. Again, this seems to be kind of far away, so I don't know that it really gave us a good signal back in 63. Did a good job in 1960. Did a good job here in 61 of picking out a low. Again, picking out, a high for a period of time, picking out a high for a period of time in 58. This in 57, really kind of in the middle move, so you can see that really didn't give us information. And in 55, it did come down and pick out a low that lasted for 6 or 7 trading sessions. Now, if you take a look at something like this is where I say, we're looking for the between the lunar cycle and Jupiter going retrograde to help us identify a high. Then we're going to have to use our other trading skills to determine how long that move is going to extend to. In this case here, it made the low, and what did it do? It made a move of a move. It went back up from the high of these swing points, back up into the high of this swing point. And so we'll just have to use normal trading techniques that we use to determine where the market is going to go. And in this case here, it's going to be especially important for us to do that because of the high volume that we have down at the bottom of this range that we're in right now. And we may continue to just use this. This may be a trading range as we continue to go, as we continue to move down. We'll just simply pay attention to volume. We can see here in November of 54, didn't really, maybe it picked out a high, but it didn't last but for a couple of days. In this case here, I don't really think that it helped us much in 53. The market was moving up. It certainly didn't pick up help us with a low. Continuing going back in 50, 49. Let's take a look at it here in 1948, 1947. Did a good job here of picking out a low. Good job here of picking out the high. Lasted for a bit. Here we go in 1940. Did a pretty good job picking out a high. Here we're kind of mid-stroke, if you will, in 1941. 1936, did a good job of picking out a high, did a good job of picking out a low. And as we come into 1934, you can see it did a good job of picking out a high. Here picked out a high, lasted for 4 or 5 trading sessions. And we've got 2 more slides just to take a look at. And these 2 being here 1933, picking out a high. In this case here, possibly the market moving up, but this looks to me like more of a mid-stroke, if you will. And then our last slide that we've got, going back to 1929, how on October 5th, this picked out a nice low, moved up for a bit before we had a crash in the marketplace. And then back here in 1930, picked out a low. So I think that, I hope that by going through all these charts, by taking a look at these last 75 events with Jupiter going retrograde, that you can see that it's important for us to take a look at. And again, I'll flip back right here. We'll go back and take a look at the summarized information. Give me just a minute to pull that up. And so on the summarized information, this is telling us that 79% of the time, either a high or a low is going to be established. In this case here, again, with the market being up the way that it is, we're looking for Jupiter being retrograde to be a high. Give me a moment here to get all the way back to the bottom of my presentation. Okay. There we go. Sorry about that. My mouse wasn't working. And I believe that may be the... Okay. Oh, there was one last thing that I wanted to do. So for those of you in the that were listening in on the last webcast that we did 2 weeks ago, we've talked about the planetary index dates. And again, the planetary index dates are going back to the ephemeris. I'm going to flip back there real quickly here. And so on the ephemeris, on the daily aspectarian, at the bottom of it, this is Monday, August the 1st, for example, and you could count each of these days here to tell you how many aspects occurred during that day. And then the same on the 2nd, the same on the 3rd, the same on the 4th, the same on the 5th, and so forth. Now, what I've done is I've taken my data, and I've gone back to 300. I have 300 years worth of data that I compiled this information for. Give me a minute here to get back up to that chart. So I have 300 years with that. What's represented here, to be exact, it represents 109,938 days. And Larry and one of his counterparts were the original guys that started taking a look at, do these planetary index dates seem to have a impact on a change in market trend. And so that's what I have listed here, this first column, which is ET, which stands for ephemeris time, and I called it the original work of the planetary index dates. Now, the reason why I say original work is because if you order the New American Ephemeris right now, what it's going to have 4 additional planets or asteroids, if you will, those being Ceres, Pallas, Juno, and Vesta. And those were not included, those were not looked at in the original work that was done, 20, 30 years ago when this was taken a look at. And so if you were just to go right now to the ephemeris, to the daily aspectarian, and start counting aspects, the problem is that you would need to take out an event where there was a aspect that included Vesta, Juno, Ceres, and so forth, Chiron as well. So 5 additional, and you could if you simply use the original work that said if you had more than 14 aspects occurring or 3 or less aspects occurring, then you had a planetary index date. Well, if you use that information from one of Larry's original workings and you went back to the new ephemeris, you would be doing yourself a disservice because you would think you had some P index dates or planetary index dates when you actually didn't. Now, what I did do for all of the data in those 300 years for these 109,000 days is I ran through it and I pulled out all those aspects. So I went back to the original work so that we could take a look at planetary index dates, and this is the distribution of days. There were actually 3 planetary index days where there was nothing on there. Where there was and there were 62 days where there was just simply one aspect occurring, 497 days where you had 2, 2005 days where you had 3. Now, in the original work that we have used to date, we always took a look at 3 or less, which represent 2.3% of the total. we were also using 14 or more. And you can see that this group here represents less than 1%. So, some of the work that I will be doing is going back and taking a look at the original work, because I have all this information, and plotting these on the charts to see, is there more of an impact when you have 1 or 2 or 3? And should we even be using 3? Because it's such a large percentage. Does 3 really throw us off if we're using 3 or less? And again here, 14, 15, 16. So I will, through our time together, I will plot these out so that, and what's wonderful about this stuff is when it's going to happen in advance. Now, what I also did, since I have this automated and computerized, is I've gone through, and because this is dealing with ephemeris time, which is off. Most of our trading that you trade or I trade, we're doing this during Eastern Standard Time. Well, during Eastern Standard Time, what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've reconfigured the data so that we're looking at it on our time zones. And it does have a little bit of a difference. You can see where we had 3 days that had 0 aspects. If you back this off to Eastern Standard Time, you had 7 days. And so there is a little bit of a difference. You do have more days or fewer days in some cases, and I'll take a look at that. What I've then also done is said, okay, look, these aspects were there even at the time that the work was being performed by Larry and group. And so if we include all of the aspects, I've then got, that's what this next two tables represent. So this is your ephemeris time and Eastern Standard Time with all of the aspects. And so that way, if you do have a New American ephemeris, what I'm now suggesting is you would potentially look at 4 or less dates that would show up. And here, instead of 14, you would be taking a look at 16 or more. We may back this off to 17 or more after I do my studies, because to see, we may find out that as we take a look at 16, that maybe it's only 50%, which really doesn't have, that's a flip of a coin, doesn't really have much of an impact on us. And again, so that's the additional work, and I wanted to just share that with you. You can see here, the average number of aspects that took place, what average number of aspects on a daily basis. And that's what we have going on there. Let me go ahead and pull up our current chart. I'm going to pull that over onto the screen here. Give me just a moment so we can take a look at where we're at in the trading session and what it is that we're looking at. And what I need someone to do in just a moment is tell me if this chart is visible. Can I just have maybe anybody that's out there, just let me know if you can see this chart. This is the SPYs on a 10-minute basis, and tell me, okay, so you can see this chart. Okay, so now on the 10-minute basis, I sent out an alert this morning that just simply said that, to move our stops up to break even, if you'd taken one of the 3 trades that I recommended a couple of days ago, and was going to look at adding to that trade if we had a pullback. And the pullback that I was looking for was for us to get back somewhere near the 618 area. You can see on this 10-minute chart here from the lows all the way up to the high, and this is again of the SPY, how we've only come back really to about the 0.382 area. Where we really came back to was the last time on a 10-minute bar, which was the close of yesterday's session, and we got down to the bottom of it, and you can see when we came back down there, we came back down with 4.9 million versus when we had 17 million at the 6 o'clock close. So what we do have going on here is absolutely a strong move. And if I was taking a look at the futures, and this was really what I was looking at this morning when I was sending out the message, I'm really paying attention to what's going on in the futures marketplace. And what this was telling me was that, the futures on the ES Mini looks like it wants to get up to this 1186. When we get up to this 1186 area, this is where we're going to want to pay attention as to what's going on. We would expect the market to pull back from here. This is actually a Gartley sell pattern. Now, because we have the mini contract trading an overnight session, what I'd love to see happen right now is I'd love to see us somehow close up into the 1185. It would take a big push, especially after a 300-point up day yesterday, and it would require us to finish up 25 S&P points, and we're not going to do that with it being 343 in the afternoon. But perhaps we can see a nice push up here between overnight. I'd love to see us get up here and see the market pull back during overnight trading session and get that going, if you will. But what we also know here is that when Gartleys fail, when 0.786 Gartleys fail, what happens is they tend to go on to butterfly patterns. And so if we take a look at where this would go from a butterfly pattern standpoint, and that's really what I expect will take place as we move up into, and again, this is just on a much shorter term time frame. I apologize for that. Let me try to pull that back up here. Oh, that's what I did. Let me make this shorter. So what this would say is that if this is a Gartley that fails here on the ES Mini, then that would take us up to the 1232. That would be a 1.272 butterfly pattern. I'm going to quickly go back and take a look at what's most important for us to take a look at. Well, now let me just see what we pull up here. We're probably pulling up the Dow chart. And again, you know that this area here with the red lines, this is the important part for us to get over. And again, it looks like where I'm looking for the Dow to take us up to is right into this 12,000 area. When we get up here, we will have another Gartley sell pattern. When we get up into this 12,000 area, what we're going to find is that we're back up against this, when we had that a triple lunar super full moon back in that March 18th, March 19th area, and this is the area that I expect that we'll be taking a look at to sell this market and go short. So it's 3:45. That is my presentation at the moment. Are there any questions? And thanks so much for attending. And again, if you don't have any questions at this point, but you do later, you know how to reach me either by phone or certainly by email, steve@tfnn.com. So are there any questions right now that I could take? I will take that silence as a no. And folks, again, thanks for joining us. Have a great afternoon, and I look forward to either talking to you by voice, by email, or on the radio. Thanks, folks. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye now.